On this channel, you could find insights into life which could leave you a changed person. There are few things as warming to the heart as conscious contact with somebody, real being to being, yet they are incredibly rare. Occasionally, you might have it with a stranger, a chance encounter, for an in-the-moment flash. You'll have it sometimes with your children. It is the most pure of contacts between humans, and coming right from their inner being, strongly enough to contact your inner being. Or maybe you've both got it. Or it's just that point in time where you have it and draw it out of somebody else. But it is wonderful. It's one of those things you remember. Now, it's possible to have that kind of contact with your children. But you have to see them for who they are, really deep down inside. Past their outward appearance, past their personality, past their intellectual ability, right to who they are. And then you're really having contact with who's in that body, instead of just the superficial perception of what's in front of you. Mostly our contact with people and our children as they grow older is like our teenage years when the hormones started. We would just see girl or boy, and it would be absolutely on the surface. If one started a relationship with them, one would get down to personality and some of their traits, and the relationship would hold on at that point of harmonious personalities, or fall apart through inharmony. And we go through life mostly that way in our contact with people. It's absolutely on the surface, and in how their personality tickles our sense of what a human should be. And it seldomly goes any deeper. One seldomly stops to see who's actually occupying that body. There is a being occupying the body. The body is really the most external thing, and actually counts for very little in a relationship. When you go on to get married and have children, you know the person a bit better, but it's still on the surface. It's their personality, how pleasant they are, how harmonious your energy is. And then the children come. And, well, they're just bodies, and when they're born, nature makes you very protective of them. But slowly you develop a relationship, not with the being inside that body, but with what you're layering over it, the name you've given it, how it behaves in your presence, what it does for you. And as the child grows up, it becomes more and more on the surface. Doesn't mean you don't love the child. You're just not seeing that real being, the real person inside there. And in due course, the child develops an identity. It identifies with its name, its gender, its abilities, the group it mixes with, its family. And it grows up and it becomes an actress or an accountant or a petrol station attendant or whatever. But underneath that, there's still that being, that person. And that person that's really deep inside there doesn't really make contact with the world, and the world doesn't make contact with it. People aren't aware of the real being inside each person they come across, or themselves. If you're really aware of your being, past your position in life, past your gender, past your mind, that real being, and you look into the real being of somebody else, you recognize them, you see them, then you can have remarkable contact. It's almost a wordless contact. It's just being to being, energy to energy, life force to life force. If when your child is born, if you're in that state of real consciousness of what you are, if your attention is coming directly from your inner self, from your source, and you can see that being in the child, you're really starting to make contact. Of course, that doesn't happen instantly because the child is still adjusting to the world. Its consciousness is not out here. It's still totally involved in its inner being. But as it starts to become conscious of the world and conscious of you, you can really see the being in that little body from your own being. It's an absolutely unhindered contact. And if you can keep that up as your child grows, recognizing its real being and recognizing your own, experiencing your own real being, it helps the child remain conscious of its being, its real source of power, its real source of life, instead of it getting lost in identity of being a little boy or a little girl and growing up to be an adolescent and growing up to be an adult. And now they've become an adult with responsibilities and an identity of being some profession, belonging to some culture or race or any of these things which are all absolutely superficial. If you can recognize the being in that child right from the beginning and maintain that contact, your being to its being, you'll develop the most satisfying and wonderful relationship, one that will really make your life feel worthwhile, despite whatever else is happening in it. We lose contact with our children bit by bit as we focus on their outside and our own, and they do the same. But if you become aware of the possibility of this relationship, you have something very special, extremely rare. And people will envy it and wonder about it. Some might be jealous of it when they don't have that contact with their children. But when you have that contact, it's easy to dismiss any of the criticism. Now, if you can have that consciousness in your whole family, your kids if you have a couple, and your spouse, the clarity you'll have in your household, you'll see life differently. You'll be able to navigate your life with more confidence. If you're aware of everybody's inner being, and they're aware of it too, you're really living in the presence of life, rather than having identities interacting in a superficial way. As your children grow up, everybody is trying to influence them. Your children are influenced by people who they'll never meet, who maybe live 1,000 kilometers away. If you've brought them up to be conscious of themselves, by being conscious yourself and themselves, the influence other people will have on them will really be minimal, and they'll be set to have a much better life. They'll have personal clarity and personal power and a balanced approach to life. You will have given them something which is the greatest thing you could give anybody. And when it's your child, and you start out from the beginning, you'll build a bond, which isn't the usual sort of bond. It's the real being-to-being bond, which has to be experienced to know what it is. Now, you won't be in this state all day, but you'll be able to check in a couple of times a day, your being to their being. And that will hold you together, because there is nothing more than that. There can be no greater relationship. When your child goes off to live their life, you won't lose that contact with them. And there will be that magnetic pull between you. Now, if your children have grown up a bit before you become aware of this, you can remedy it by becoming aware of your own inner being, who you are, and reach into them, to who their real being is. Try and see it. Don't demand anything of them. Just try and see it. And when you look for it, you'll find it. And you'll be able to build this wonderful inner relationship from there. You can do it with your spouse too. It's never too late. It's just wonderful to do it from the beginning. But any time will work. Recognize that real being that's inside the body of your child, inside the personality of your child and the mind of your child. That real being that is inside, that is the one permanent thing that's there. And experience the wonder of true spiritual contact. I don't know what other term you could give it. It's giving conscious attention to somebody else's consciousness. And it's beyond description. You have to try it. That is the secret of a good relationship. The closer and deeper the relationship is the result of how conscious you are and how conscious they are. Give your children the gift of consciousness of their real inner being, by recognizing it all the time as they grow up. And as they change, as they grow older, and you change as you grow older, that relationship won't change, because your real inner being is timeless.